Whoa, folks, before we get to final thoughts, I just have to interject with a pretty big rules correction. In case you just watched the run through without the Klingon subtitles turned on, please turn on your Klingon subtitles. But anyway, this is a really common mistake a lot of people make because the rules are kind of fast and loose with triggered versus activated. Anyway, monks that are out on the board, when you put a shed next to them, they do not trigger all the tiles next to them. Instead, they just push your brewmaster ranking up. You only get to have them trigger all adjacent tiles when you use one of the purple monk scoring discs. So, just FYI, and now... Hey everybody, final thoughts time for Heaven and Ale. And I am not alone today. I am joined all the way from the Windy City and the Pilsen Game Group. It's Tony Faber. Hey Tony.
Hi folks.
I can't actually see Tony. I'm just looking at a wall right now, but I assume he's right here on screen. Tony! Tony is one of my backers on Kickstarter. He's a big fan of Rahdo Runthrough, and he backed at a level that allowed him to give his 2 cents on this game, and I'm very happy to have him here because, as per usual, I have only played this as a 2-player game, whereas Tony's played it a lot at all player counts. So, Tony will be here to give his expert opinions and sage advice, but since it's my show, I'm going to start out. You okay with that, Tony?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. I have no idea if I'm even remotely making an eye line there. I should just stop doing that. Okay, so this is a really sharp game. This is, I think, what is this? This is the third of 4 Michael Kiesling games that came out this year around Essen Spiel, several of which he has co-designed, this time with Andreas Schmidt. I'm not really familiar with Andreas's work, but I am a huge fan of Michael Kiesling. Absolutely love his stuff, especially when he teams up with Matthias Kramer. I mean, Kramer and Kiesling are absolutely phenomenal, but I remember when I did my top 10 designers list a while ago, and I had to choose, I can't say Kramer and Kiesling, I have to choose one or the other, and I went with Kiesling. And 2017 was the year of the Kiesling. He drowned us with goodies. This, Azul, Reworld, and Riverboat. And Heaven and Ale, I don't know, this is maybe a bit presumptuous. Actually, I would say I think probably Azul is arguably the best, strongest design of all of them because of its wonderful, clean simplicity. But I think Heaven and Ale is probably the heaviest of them, the meatiest, the weightiest of them, and it provides a really fun, rock-solid puzzle. There is so much going on, between the rondelle, trying to grab the stuff you want, and which is interesting enough. But then building that patchwork in both the sunny side and the shady side with incredibly painful decisions about where to put these things. This is a game equally full of short-term choices made on the rondelle. Should I wait? Should I grab that now? Is somebody else going to take it from me? And long-term choices as I'm building up to try to get the best, the best shed I can, or sometimes the worst shed, because really poor tiles can give me different types of bonuses. There's so much different stuff you can pursue, and it's really, really impressive. It's a very rock-solid design, and while Jen and I enjoyed it, I don't think it was my favorite of the Kiesling games this year. And mostly because of one very, very big thing that kind of drove me nuts about Reworld as well. And Tony, I'll find out how you feel about this in a second, but it's the fact that when you set the board up, you are always going to play with the exact same set of objectives, with the exact same set of privileges. Really, the only thing that mixes the game up from game to game is the random deployment of all the different tiles that you can draft for. And don't get me wrong, that is certainly enough. That does push certain strategies. It does make the game evolve in different directions, and you can play a very different game and pursue very different end goals. But still, I like it so much more when I sit down with a game and I'm just like, oh my God, blown away. Oh, this combination of stuff is going to happen this game. I can't wait to see how that plays out. Heaven and Ale, and I had the same complaint about Reworld, gives you the same canvas to paint on every single time. And while you're going to make a different painting, for me, I just wish that I was starting with a different shaped canvas every single time to inspire me to even greater varieties of paintings. Although that's a terrible analogy because this is about beer and all of that. But while we really liked it, I don't think it's a keeper for that main reason. My other main issue with it was, As a two-player game, I was really surprised there's very little scaling involved. In a two-player game, there are so many options available for you. I suspect, and this is why I'm really interested in what Tony thinks, I suspect there's a bit less tension because, I didn't get the thing I wanted. There's another thing almost as good. And I suspect at a higher player count, you're going to be, it's going to be 3 more turns before I can go again. Is that thing that I desperately want going to be there? Because this whole Glenn Moore-esque, the farther you jump on the rondelle to get the thing you need, the more opportunities you're giving up and giving to your opponents. That's much more interesting when you're really enticed to jump really far because there's only one shot at getting that. But you know what? There's multiple shots to get everything you want. Oh, you didn't get the purple the first time around? Get one of the multiple choice purples that are coming later on. And so I think... I suspect there'd be a little bit more tension and excitement at a higher player count, plus the lack of setup variability. Well, it's not a problem. It'll play differently, but I'd like to see a bit more. So those were mentioned my responses, but now I'm very interested to hear what Tony has to say. Tony, go!
So, I agree with a lot of what you said concerning the variability.
Then this show is over. We're done. Goodbye, everybody.
The game does have a lot less variability than most modern Euros do in terms of having modular setup that you'll see in a lot of different things. Like you said, just the ingredient tiles are really the only thing that gets mixed up from game to game. I think most of the variability in the game comes from the players that you're playing with. And the different strategies they're taking and how willing they are to jump ahead to take tiles. Having played with a few different play groups, different people will approach it very differently, and that will give you kind of the same different experience. But if you do play with the same group and they do the same thing every time, I think there will be less.
Every single time, who always does the same stuff. Believe me, that's my situation. Yeah.
And it is. I wouldn't say it's necessarily tighter as a whole in the sense that you do have more rounds and the scaling of the rounds. I think the 4-player game, while each round is tighter, actually gives you the most opportunities to get things at 6 rounds.
Oh, just because the game goes on longer, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So you're not quite as pushed. Whereas playing only 3 rounds at 2 players means that last scoring round can be really, desperately cutthroat in going for the scoring tiles.
Yeah.
And I was really curious to see what you thought of the cutthroat nature of the game in the sense that it's obviously all indirect interaction, but the interaction can be very mean at the end of the game when somebody desperately needs one thing to pull it out and you're like, well, I'm just going to take that thing and your whole thing falls apart at the end.
Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry. I'm rude.
And particularly with the scoring tiles when there's only a couple left and both people desperately need it. There's almost gets sort of like a prisoner's dilemma of we're both going to score a lot less if we both jump ahead for these tiles, but if we don't, you might do it first, and then I'm screwed because I've got to score something here at the end.
Yeah. I guess that's certainly true. And actually, to be fair, I think that's something I didn't actually mention in the main run-through, so I should mention that when you play, I think it's only at the 2-player game, the last time for the 3rd round that you seed the board, you put out double purples. So there's 2 opportunities for all of them to make up for the fact that, as Tony said, when you're playing with higher player counts, there will be many, many more opportunities, many, many more rounds to score. The game, and that is actually something I do enjoy about the 2-player game, that it is so tight, just 3 fast rounds. This is easily an under an hour game, even with heavy AP players like Jen and myself. So that's a big feather in its cap. I don't know that we found it to be too terribly aggressive because, again, in that last round, you're getting doubles. Chances are we have found that because certain things can build up from round to round. And in our experience anyway, you rarely have enough money to say, I'm going to buy everything on this space. There's generally a bunch of stuff left over. Plus, Jen and I, one thing we do tend to do is always, it's just kind of this instinctual thing we do that, you're zigging, I'm going to zag. We always pursue different stuff. So we didn't see that much overlap, between stuff. And certainly I would think, for players who do tend to find themselves kind of focusing on the same stuff like a laser, you can see that happening fairly early on. There will still be the opportunity for both of you to do it in the last round, but maybe you want to do it several times, and and that'll be denied you, I guess you're saying?
Well, I guess maybe it does show up a little more at the higher player counts in the sense that you have more people in the last round or two competing for those discs. But I think it's also player dependent. If you both kind of take your time and sort of, you take a disc here and then I'll take a disc later, that may show up as not as cutthroat. But I played with groups who jump ahead early. If you're playing at 3, for instance, and 2 of the players are jumping ahead for the discs in the last round, you must get in there with them and jump ahead for those discs.
And see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It felt to me, for the most part, like that was not absent in the 2-player game, but it was not as prevalent as I would imagine it is at higher player counts. Because you're right, the game overall is shorter, but that's because you have access to twice as much stuff, because there's half as many players grabbing all the things you might want. So it all comes out in the wash, I think. And the fact that, like I said, in that last round there are double, the double discs. The other thing, the same lack of tension comes from the fact that it's kind of a funky rule. I mean, I guess I don't mind it, but the fact that when you land onto, I forget what they're called, one of the scoring spaces where you get to say, I have completed X, Y, or Z, that you can do everything. It's not like when you land there, you could say, okay, well, I'll register this objective or this objective or this objective. When you land there, it's like, okay, I'm going to score all 3 of these objectives that I finished half an hour ago. Which was very surprising because it meant we didn't really feel the pressure in the early game. Oh, I must get in there and score these things early. I might as well wait until I got a whole bunch of stuff to score. Now, I would suspect at a higher player count, if I wait too long, I'll miss my first shot and my second shot at scoring one of those things. But again, that's just not going to be too much of an issue. Yeah, maybe I'll end up not having as many points, but oh, she got first place in that? Okay, I'll just get second place in it later on. It still behooves me to wait and score a whole bunch of objectives all at once. I almost feel like, at least at the lower player count, to replicate the pressure that people must have of, oh my God, all the objectives I want to do are going to be stolen, and I got to go earlier because I can't push my luck. It almost feels like in 2-player that maybe, hey, when you land on those, you can only score one objective. You can't score everything, so you've got to make more time to do that, which then in turn slows you down and gives your one other player a chance to jump ahead. These are the things that we definitely enjoyed as a 2-player game. We definitely felt it was solid. Aside from all this, everything I'm talking about has to do with the central rondel, where the main player interaction is. Mm-hmm. The puzzle of your own board is lovely. It's so brilliant and crunchy and hard. Money is so tight, and you have to sacrifice so much to do what you want to do. That part is absolutely amazing. It's just that I think at the lower player count, the rondel could have used a little bit more to scale it, but like I said, that's why I'm interested. So you have played it at the 2, and I'm curious though that you said you felt, I don't know, maybe it's just a reflection of the players you're playing. Jen and I aren't cutthroat. We purposely tend wherever possible to go in different directions so we don't have that kind of overlap. You though found that with cutthroat players it can become even more chess-like at 2.
Yeah, it can be very cutthroat, and you're competing not only for the disc, but like you said, the last round is when people tend to go for the barrels, the scoring objectives. Oh. So you can have some excruciating decisions about, do I go for that scoring disc now, or do I take the barrels now? And if I take the scoring disc, somebody's going to come in and I'm not going to get the barrels until the end, and I'm going to lose a whole bunch of points when somebody does it first. But if I go for the barrels, then Joe's going to take that scoring disc, and that scoring disc is going to mean everything to me. So the last round, some really excruciating decisions as far as that goes. The whole game doesn't feel, in terms of your scoring, doesn't necessarily feel tighter at 3 or 4 because, like I said, you've got more rounds to complete everything. But at 3 or 4, I think you're right that the last round getting the discs, even with the extra discs, there's 3 extra discs at 3 players, can feel, super tight and cutthroat depending on your group. I was also wondering if, one thing I wanted to say about this game that people may not realize at the outset, thinking about how the scoring works and the average scoring, and it's sort of a threshold you need to get to a certain level before you start scoring. Mm-hmm. Is that players playing this for the first time or people not used to this kind of game, it can be incredibly unforgiving, we found to them. Because, most games, if you don't do that well, you'll still get some points in a Euro game. A Euro game will just throw you some points, right? Yeah. But this game says if you don't do well enough, you just get nothing. Yeah. You score 0 points for your beer if you don't get over that threshold. So I think it's worth noting that this is probably not a great game to introduce Euro games to people or to people who are going to react badly to a poor first play, because I've seen people score almost nothing on their beer the first time they played it as they're figuring out the game.
Well, I'm going to blame that on the teacher. Hopefully it wasn't you. Was it?
It was me, the teacher, but you can tell people, well, look, you've got to do this, you've got to get those scoring discs, and you've got to do that, but you got to kind of figure it out for yourself. Or you tell people the other critical thing is, and I think one thing about this game also is that you must get money early. You've got to play on the dark side and hopefully play some reasonably high tiles on the dark side early, or you're going to be poor or broke the whole game, and you will not do well.
Yeah, it's going to make you work hard, yeah. Do you feel like you have played the game more than me? It's a suspicion I had. It's one of the reasons you haven't seen my run through yet, but when I did the run through, I really kind of focused on I forget who. I think I was heavy on money and Jen was heavy on, to heck with that, I'm just going to get the ingredients. And there are ways around it. If you're willing to forgive those, you can always get more money by giving up those privileges, which is brilliant. I love that. Again, that's that kind of just heart-wrenching sacrifice to make to keep on inching forward that I love. But you have found with your plays that, an early money strategy is almost necessary?
I think it is almost necessary to do the best. And in fact, if I have one criticism of the game besides a bit of the lack of the variability, it is that it's low. Playing on the light side early, or in general playing the lower tiles. I mean, you'll play lower tiles here and there, particularly when you pick up 2 at a time for things that have been skipped in the previous round. But if you do a strategy of just picking up 1s and 2s early, you're probably just not going to do as well as the person who's picking up 4s and 5s. Sure, you're going to move your brewmaster up higher, and maybe you intentionally do that at some points, but you're not making any money. And the person who gets a huge money engine going can then just buy big on the light side in the mid to late game and is probably going to score higher on their ingredients. That's my experience so far. Now, it's not completely rote gameplay in the sense that you still got to figure out exactly when you transition and how you do it, and the tactical puzzle of your board always feels a little bit different. But the general strategy of play on the dark, and then play on the light and get your money engine going first seems to be the best way after having played it 8 or 9 times. Yeah.
I wonder if that's the case. If so, that's unfortunate. And honestly, I wouldn't expect that from a seasoned designer like Kiesling. I know one time when we played it, Jen focused like a laser on her brewmaster. Actually got her brewmaster all the way to the top. And actually continued to make money off of it. And then, and not surprisingly, in that game, she did not have much in the way of ingredients, but that was okay because what she did have was able to do a really big turnover. I don't remember if she won or I won that game. I think every game we played at this, we were fairly close. And a big part of that was saying, you know what, I am actually going to make a concerted effort to grab all these lobies because there are benefits to doing that. Getting to activate all the lobies.
Yes.
And lobies, putting lobies in the dark side to make a little bit of money isn't going to help you, whereas putting them in the light side, particularly for the ingredients that you have more of to begin with, and then being able to pick that number. Because the other thing too, if you're just going for nothing but high numbers, you're not going to be able to use, I forget which purple disc it is, but the one that lets you activate everything of a given number, repeatedly. Whereas if you dabble in a wider range of numbers, that gives you more opportunities to purple it up. It seems like there's a lot, but again, I will have to defer to you because you've probably played this at least 3 or 4 times, as much as we have, because that is the nature of my existence. I've got a mountain of games right there that are just they're burning. I'm looking at the teddy bear. Anyway, so
even having said that, though, Richard, I want to be clear. The game, I love the game, and the game doesn't feel the same in every play, even if you do the same general strategy, because the tactical differences in the situation always give a huge amount of tension to it.
I mean, maybe it is just the case. It's not the end of the world that in Agricola you're going to lose if you don't build your family up. Yeah, it's a given. You have to do it. There are ways that Uwe Rosenberg could have designed it in such a way that wasn't quite as mandatory, but it is what it is, and maybe that's the case for Evan and Ale too. You can't get very far without some coin in your purse.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. It doesn't to me, it doesn't ruin the game. It's just something you should know going in. And I think it doesn't affect one of the core strategic decisions which makes the game interesting to me, which is when you first start scoring, because the push and pull, a huge push and pull in this game is, do you score a little now or a lot later with your discs? Because you can do I score this color ingredient now and get a bunch of money that I desperately need, but if I do that, then I'm not going to be able to score that ingredient when I build a lot of it on the light side later. And so it's like playing, do I score it now for money, or do I wait until it's really can flourish? And that push and pull is really can be excruciating. And if you make the wrong decision, you either are going to get not enough money if you wait too long, and that's terrible, or you score it too early, and then you're just not going to be able to have the opportunity to get your ingredients where you get to do them. And it's one thing that's interesting also, the feel this game gives you because of that, and the difficulty of the puzzle. This game can make you feel stupid when you play it.
Welcome to my world, yes.
But I think a lot of games can make you feel clever, and you do a clever play. This game makes you feel like, oh my God, even if you win, you feel like, if I'd done that other thing, I would have scored 10 more points. It really can make you feel like you just messed the puzzle up, even if you win the game. I mean, it's and particularly combine that with a threshold scoring. If you don't score high in your beer, this game can just make you feel like, wow. But I think that's not a bad thing, in the sense that it makes you want to come back and really do better. If you feel like you've kind of figured out a game and you know the best strategy in the first play or two, it doesn't pull you to try it again. But this game, when it punishes you, it says, I could have done 8 different things better. Let me give it another shot. Which I think is good.
It puts you through the ringer in a really good way. I completely agree. And the fact that it is so fast, and I assume at the higher player counts, it's still a pretty quick game as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really, of course, depends how much people AP it. But I've played a 3-player game in probably just under an hour with people who've played it before and are playing fast. On the other hand, a 3-player game with 3 new players who were, APing it out was almost 2 hours. So your mileage may vary there.
Okay. Well, okay, so overall, big thumbs up for you, kind of a thumbs medium for us when we liked it. I mean, actually, there's nothing we don't like about it. It's just like, I contrast and compare this, and again, it's going to come back to the first thing I was mentioning, the lack of set variability, to, what was it, Vladimir Sui's
Pulsar 2849,
which drowns you in setup variability. Every time you play, it's like, oh my God, there's a million different levers to pull, and that didn't even exist the last time you play. And that's what I'm missing from here, because, I mean, as you said, I play with the same beautiful, wonderful woman every single time I play. She's kind of, hey, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Either because I didn't get to work, I'm going to make it work, or because it worked, I'm going to do it again. And that's why we need that extra variability, because it's very easy for us, the only 2 people in the world who play games, as far as from our perspective, to kind of fall into a rut. The onus is on us to break out of that rut. We like the game to break us out. So other than that, though, phenomenal game, super sharp. Have you played Kiesling's other games of the year this year so far?
Just Azul. Okay. I haven't played Riverboat. I haven't played Reworld yet. I'm interested to try, especially Riverboat looks like it has some of the same kind of puzzle elements on your player board.
Yes, it does.
That has me interested.
Yeah, they're almost sister games, because they both have that kind of hex board, very interesting puzzle. How am I going to build this up and harvest from it? Although they do it in a very different way, but at a casual glance, they look similar. And it's cool to contrast and compare, which I'll probably do when I get around to Riverboat, which I think is my last one of the year of Kiesling videos I've still got to do. But okay, that's it. So in closing, Tony, is there anybody you want to give a shout out to or anything like that?
I want to thank Beth and John from Board Game Geek and the Eurogame meetup in Chicago, because they were actually generous enough to trade me this game so I could. Hasn't come out yet in the United States, so this allowed me to get my hands on it and actually play it a lot, and I've really enjoyed doing that. So cool. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, John.
Awesome. All right then. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks for watching. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Say it.
So long.
You didn't say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Sorry.